On behalf of the County Workforce Investment Board and the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors, I'd like to welcome everybody here. Thank you so much. This was a really important event. We had, just so that you know, we had over 2,000 jobs in these tents over here that we were had employers here throughout the county who made a commitment and who wanted to hire a veteran. And so I think that's an amazing thing that happened over here today. So I want to thank everybody for their participation in that. The next thing I'd like to do is thank all of our veterans who are here in attendance today. This is the freedom that we enjoy, and thank you so much for your service. I'd also like to thank the county staff and all of the folks from DVT Marketing who put this event together today. This was a really a long time coming, if you will. A lot of people put a lot of preparation into this, and so without their help, this event would not have been possible. So thank you, all of you. You know who you are. I'd like to introduce the narrator for tonight's program. We're about to start. He currently serves on the San Bernardino County Workforce Investment Board, and he is the chair of our Youth Council. And he is one of the many folks who direct the funding that goes directly into helping youth and veterans and the programs that help folks in our county to better themselves through employment and better themselves for their families. He was a veteran. He is a veteran, and he was a combat engineer for the California Army National Guard. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Logan Olds. Please give him your attention. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hey, good evening. How are all of you doing? Good, right? Everyone's here. We're honoring our veterans. Thank you. Thank you for those of you that have served and for those of you that want to serve in the military, because I see some young'uns out there and I'm sure they're gung-ho, right? So tonight I'm going to be narrating the program. And first and foremost, we have the Memorial Honor Detail Team 51. This is an all-forces color guard from Riverside National Cemetery. So if you'll all please rise for the presentation and posting of the colors and remain standing for the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that that star-spangled banner yet wave, for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Hey! Both colors. Lift. Hey! Color guard. Forward. Look.
Thank you, Mr. Michael Martin, for your rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner and for serving in the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. Now, please join me in welcoming Mr. Alex Brandon, Chief Chaplain of the U.S. Conference of Chaplains. He is also a member of the California State Committee for Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve. This is a Department of Defense DoD program, and an elected director for the Phelan Pinion Hills Community Services District. So he's a local. Welcome.
If you'll all please join me in prayer. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as a nation, we were convinced early that we could not endure half slave and half free. The most basic of human rights for which our veterans and their families have sacrificed are those which will allow them to continue to contribute to the good of society. Our most elusive dream has been the pursuit of happiness. It is a state which each must find for himself. But we can help each other if you, Lord, will help us to discover the secret of happiness, which comes not just from the selfish pursuit of indulgence, but from sharing not just what we have, but who we are. We pray on this Flag Day that you recreate in each of us the dreams of our founding fathers, who by your grace knew that where there was no dream, there could be no destiny. Bless our veterans' dreams with the destinies which may have been present in our employers, presenters, and connections made this day. Bless the food prepared for us, that it may strengthen us to bring successful changes in our lives. And finally, that for those who continue to serve today, all over the world in our armed forces, your divine protection and mercy. For you are our God, and to you we would ascribe glory and honor, now and forever. Amen.
Now I have the honor of introducing someone, and this is going to be a relatively long introduction. For those of you that are in the service, you'll know how incredible this man's service to our country has been. For those of you that have not been in the service, by the time I'm done, you will understand. We're going to be introducing the POW MIA flag next. And I wanted to introduce a man who served his country as a veteran of the U.S. Air Force Academy from 1964 to 1968, the U.S. Air Force from 1968 to 1990, the Cold War campaign from 1964 to 1990. I still remember the nuclear war drills where as a child I had to hide under my desk. I always thought, what in the world is hiding under my desk going to do if the nuclear bomb goes off? Anyway, the Vietnam War, 1971 to 1973. In June of 1968, he graduated from the Air Force Academy. He went on to electronic warfare officer training, survivor school, radar lead, and F-4 Phantom II combat crew training. Upon completion, he was assigned as an F-4 weapons systems officer with the 46th Tactical Fighter Squadron at Udorn Royal Thai Air Force Base in Thailand. While flying his 269th combat mission, he was forced to eject over North Vietnam. And as he parachuted to the ground on July 3rd, one day before July 4th, 1972, he was taken as a prisoner of war. After spending 270 days in captivity, he was released during Operation Homecoming in March of 1973. After a brief hospitalization to recover from his captivity, he began pilot training and was awarded his wings in 1975. He went on to continue serving his country, and during his 22-year career, he served as a flight commander, an assistant operations officer, chief of training, chief of standardization and evaluation, and transportation squadron commander. He retired from active duty on July 1st, 1990, while stationed right here at George Air Force Base with over 480 hours of combat time, 3,000 hours in the F-4, and 3,600 hours total flying time. All right, so now let's talk about the decorations, because I'm not done. The Distinguished Flying Cross with 4 oak leaf clusters, the Purple Heart, the Prisoner of War Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters, the Air Medal with 16 oak leaf clusters, the Air Force Commendation Medal, the Air Force Outstanding Unit Award with Valor and 1 oak leaf cluster, the Combat Readiness Medal, the Vietnam Service Medal, and the Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Cross. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presentation of the POW flag carried by former prisoner of war, Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Tony Marshall. All right, please be seated. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce my boss on the Workforce Investment Board, Mr. Rod Hoover.
My name is Rod Hoover. I am the chair for the Workforce Investment Board, and on behalf of the Workforce Investment Board for San Bernardino County, I want to thank all of you who are veterans for your hard work and dedication in serving our country and the sacrifices you have made over the years. The WIB, the Workforce Investment Board, as it's called, has 2 missions. And it's important to remember the 2 missions because they work together. It's kind of interesting. First is to help residents in the San Bernardino County find jobs. Give them the skills to find jobs, train them to find jobs, and help them get jobs. The other one is to work with businesses that are out there to help find candidates and to help them hire those candidates, as well as to train them once they are hired. So 2 very important. They work very closely together to basically get people employed, which is really great. Veterans at this point in time are our top priority. We have a lot of veterans coming back from the Iraq and Afghan wars, and we need to find them jobs and put them to work. It is time for us to do something for them, and the Workforce Investment Board is doing that. We have prioritized veterans, as I mentioned, and we hope to provide you with some tools to do that, to help you build your careers when you return, for those of you who are in that category. The board has federal dollars to help you find a position and to pay for skills training to help you prepare for a job at no cost to you. After tonight's event, I welcome you to check out our veterans portal. It's www.sbcountywets.com. Again, that's www.sbcountywets.com. vets.com. This event is also made possible through our partnership with another workforce investment board. This one's from Kern County. They have secured Desert Green's Veterans Training Grant. These funds have helped many combat and peacetime veterans receive no-cost skills training in growing industries. As a human resource professional, and I have been in the field for 38 years, as you can probably tell, and I have hired literally thousands of veterans in my career, or the people who work for me have hired thousands of veterans for the employers that I have worked for. And we know, those of us in the human resources field, know that as veterans, you bring many valuable skills to the workplace, and employers like me, I'm a human resources manager for a company who was at the booth today, we want to hire people like you who are veterans. Your character and respect for authority, your ability to work well within a team, to follow directions, to arrive on time, and to persist when all things are going against you are valuable traits in employees, and we cherish those traits. Your technical, and this is one where it hits my heart in particular because I have probably 15 recruiters I work with throughout the company trying to find veterans for me to fill some of my vacancies. Your technical and mechanical skills training is highly sought after by employers in this country as well. Our hope is that through this job fair that was earlier today, you met with employers that are actively hiring for jobs that are available today. We hope that this was the first step towards a new career or training opportunity through the county's workforce investment programs, board programs, to help you better your career. You are brave men and women who have given much to serve this country, and now it is our turn to give back to you. On behalf of the Workforce Investment Board, we appreciate you, we honor you, and we hope to help you build your careers that will allow you and your families to create a good life in San Bernardino County. With that, I would like to introduce the next guest. And I'm very honored to introduce this guest who will be speaking with you. He is Captain Mark Lupke. He is the Headquarters Battalion Commander for the Marine Corps Logistics Base. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the warm welcome, everyone, and good afternoon. Today we celebrate Flag Day, the birthday of our nation's flag. As we think back over the history of our flag, we remember that the story of its early years mirror that of our nation's history, which is often one of hardship and trials, sometimes a fight for simple survival, a story repeated by our nation's leader during trying times. Such is the story behind our Star-Spangled Banner. Much is revealed about its history in a poem entitled Defense of Fort McHenry, written by Francis Scott Key. Our own national anthem is derived from this very poem. Now, it was written 2 years into the War of 1812, and at that time, America was teetering on the edge of defeat. The British had already taken our capital and burned the White House. Baltimore was the next target in a grand design to divide our forces and crush this newly independent nation of upstart colonies. All that stood between the British and Baltimore were the guns of Fort McHenry, blocking their entry into Baltimore Harbor. The British bombardment lasted for 25 trying hours. Through the dark hours of the night, the rockets fired and the bombs exploded. And a young American lawyer, Francis Scott Key, held captive aboard a British ship, watched anxiously for some proof, some sign that liberty would prevail. The next morning, in the dawn's early light, he looked and saw the banner still flying, a little tattered and torn, and perhaps a little singed, but still flying proudly above the fort's ramparts. Fort McHenry and the brave fighting men manning it had withstood the assault. Baltimore was saved, the United States would endure. Now, thinking back on that story, you'll realize that our democracy, which is frequently described as fragile by some, is so strong because it was forged in the bellows of conflict and adversity. In those dark days of the war, it must have been easy to give in to despair. But our forefathers were motivated by a cause beyond themselves. From the harsh winter of Valley Forge with George Washington to the violent night above Fort McHenry with Francis Scott Key, these patriot soldiers, sailors, and Marines were sustained by the ideals of human freedom. Through the hardships and the setbacks, they kept their eyes on that ideal and purpose, just as through the smoke of battle, they kept a lookout for our flag. For with the birth of our nation, the cause of human freedom had become forever tied to that flag and its survival. As the new American Republic grew and prospered and new stars were added to the flag, the ideal of freedom grew and prospered. From the eastern seaboard to the shores of California to the Sea of Tranquility on the moon, our pioneers carried our flag with them, a symbol of the indomitable spirit of a free people. And let us never forget that in honoring our flag, we honor the American men and women who have courageously fought and died for it over the last 200 years, patriots who set an ideal above any consideration of self. Our flag flies free today because of their sacrifice. Now, Flag Day also reminds me of a personal story in which I was truly touched by the mere sight of our banner. In the spring of 2005, I was a student at college in Rome, Italy. My apartment was across the street from the Vatican, about a half mile from the Pope's residence, but probably not quite as luxurious. And after having spent a few months away from the U.S., I hadn't seen a single American flag flying, but I also managed to avoid McDonald's, and that was a good thing. On a warm, quiet evening near Villa Borghese, I was walking up a hill lined with wine bars and restaurants after dinner with some American friends. When I crested the hill, I saw a white building illuminated by outside lighting. But what caught my eye was a crisp American flag flying above the building, with a spotlight shining directly upon it. I actually got goosebumps and felt strangely at home, although being thousands of miles from it. I was so moved by the moment that I tried to take a photo, but was quickly intercepted by Italian police. Apparently, photographing the embassy is not allowed. So with that being said, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and when you remember our nation's history, also remember our nation's flag. Thank you, and God bless.
First off, I'd just really like to thank everybody for coming out. Special salute to all the veterans, my brotherhood here. And thanks to the Workforce Investment Board. It's really nice to see the veterans get a break for a change. I'm going to give you a little bit of my background. You've heard most of it, a lot of exaggeration, but I always like to start off with a few disclaimers. And the first one is I didn't do anything special. As the line goes, just doing my job. Most of the veterans out there will tell you we all raised our hand to do the same job. Some of us got a little extra duty. In a sense, I felt lucky that I got that experience because it was a great experience. Not that I'd volunteer for it, but once it happened, it was a great learning experience. Another thing, I got there at the very end, so I did not go through the hell that the folks that spent 6 and 8 years in prison did. So I got a little taste of it, but didn't do the full course. It was, to me, an interesting adventure. And again, I think most of the veterans can relate to that because we all know it could happen on any given day. But saying that, I know you'll think I'm crazy, but I almost enjoyed my time there. It was the culmination of a military career. And as was said before, we go out, do our job so that people can be idiots and have their free speech. It is Flag Day. One interesting story I like to tell is Mike Christian was one of the longtime prisoners, and typical ingenuity, taking a handkerchief and whatever else he could find, he made an American flag that all of the prisoners pledged allegiance to every morning. And of course, he had to hide that from the Vietnamese. And of course, it wouldn't be a good movie if they didn't discover it one day. And they beat the living snot out of him. And when they threw him back in the cell, his cellmates noticed he went back in the corner and started on the next flag. So, you know, when you see people who want to change the national anthem or who don't want to stand during the Pledge of Allegiance or the national anthem, they don't realize until somebody gets caught in a Turkish prison or a revolt in some foreign country and they see that flag, then they appreciate it. But anyway, I signed up in the Air Force, had a great time flying, which is one of my passions. Combat is what you signed up to do. You go get shot at. They shoot at you, you shoot at them. As long as you obey the rules, do common sense, I think it's fairly safe. The unit I was in had a better safety record than we did stateside because we did take care of our buddies. And that, any veteran will tell you, that's the name of the game. So I thought it was interesting flying up to North Vietnam and dodging the SAMs and bullets. And, there were times we shot at MiGs, they shot at us. We all went back to the bar and told stories. We never hit anything, but it was great war stories. But one fateful day, we did something stupid, which, again, most of the folks that got shot down did something stupid. Now, it may be something you got away with every other day and got complacent, but you violated some common sense rules in most cases. We did, and we ended up on the ground, and I got whisked away to the prison. It actually took 5 days to go up the trail. I had one chance to get away, and I didn't make it. So they threw me in jail. I was probably, and this is something you probably don't hear too much, before I got shot down, and actually I didn't get shot down, we just messed up and dropped out of the sky. But, well, they claim they shot us down, but I don't believe it. But most of us, when we were sitting around talking, had sworn we would never get captured alive because of what the folks who had been there for 8 years went through. So we all said, Plan A, don't get out of the airplane, just burn up in the crash. I couldn't do that. Plan B, if things get too hot, save the last bullet and blow your brains out. I couldn't do that. And Plan C, if things get really bad, just start one of those land battles that you can't win. And you're guaranteed you're going to get killed because you've got a .38 and they've got AK-47s. Luckily for me, I was in shock, so I didn't get to do any of that dumb stuff. So I ended up in jail, but my biggest fear once I got caught was not torture or anything else. My life didn't flash before my eyes or anything. What really made me mad, well, there were two things that made me mad. One was that nobody would know what happened. And the fact that I was on the other side of the world with no recourse really tightened my jaws. My mother couldn't do anything. Police couldn't do anything. Government couldn't do anything. Vietnamese could do what they wanted with me. Once we got past that, they threw me in jail. What bothered me the most was not so much the torture, but the stories I'd heard that if you're in solitary confinement for an extended period of time, you actually lose your mind, you lose your ability to speak if you don't hear your language. That bugged me, that I would come home as a vegetable some years down the road. So, we did creative things. My creative thing was to get into mischief and harass the Vietnamese as much as I could. So when I say I had fun, you can believe me, I did have fun, knowing that they weren't going to bother me. And I could stay here all night and tell you some of those tales, but trust me, it was interesting. And kids don't listen to this, but my survival technique was to lie. And I'm good at lying when I have to. So the interesting thing was the Vietnamese, and this is pretty typical in the Oriental culture, saving face is more important than getting information. So it really didn't matter what I said to their questions. As long as they had an answer, they were okay. So I was very creative, and we got in several discussions. One of the best ones I heard was when one of the Navy guys, and I always call them Navy toads because there's a rivalry between branches, but he spent a couple of hours convincing the Vietnamese that it really was true that the 1,000 men on the ship could stretch a rubber band and launch the aircraft off it. And they truly believed that. When we got into discussions with them, they had no concept of a house like ours having only one family. They had no concept of more than one newspaper. And they had no concept of dating. Your parents picked your girl, and that was it. So, having fun, I created 14 girlfriends. I was single at the time, and when that got boring, I created a wife and child. And the amazing thing is they were so gullible that when they released me, they actually gave me my wedding ring, which turns out to be the other guy's. That's another part of this flag. POW was lucky in a sense. MIA, KIA, very unlucky. And the fellow who was flying my plane ended up eventually being KIA. And we pretty well figured that he started a land battle that he couldn't win, because we were both alive on the ground. But the trauma that that does to a family is just something unspeakable. And that's part of the untold story. So families, you know, you send your loved ones in harm's way, you're a part of this also. So again, welcome all the veterans. I'm not going to sit up here all day. So thank you very much.